and lorazepam that he gave him, not these 8 pills. And that could mean a big thing for the prosecution's
And on
case.
paper, oh, it's big for the prosecution. But as we all try to even talk about this, the complexity of it, and I have been trapped in it too. I mean, the complexity of the propofol and the lorazepam and the metabolites and how it's processed and how different levels were found in different parts of the body. John Manuelian, defense attorney, doesn't this also provide another opportunity for the defense to muddy up the waters and get us so confused about what Michael Jackson was given when and what he might have taken and how it ended up where in his body that the jury throws up its hands and says, I can't figure it out, reasonable doubt?
Confusion could always be a good thing for the defense, but in the end, the jury instructions, Jane, are going to say what the evidence shows. And that's the problem with the defense attorneys in this case. I've been very critical of Ed Chernoff getting up there and trying to spell out everything as far as what happened. You never make promises to the jury that you cannot keep. And right now, Ed Chernoff's promise is coming back to bite him. So what he needs to do at this point in time, he needs to change his strategy and needs to do good cross-examination of Schaefer, finish him off, put on Paul White, who is the self-professed father of propofol, and hope that that's the nuclear bomb that the defense is looking for in this case.
You know, it's so important. And let's go back to opening statements, by the way, because we're talking about what the defense's big theory here was, that Michael Jackson gave himself these drugs and that led to his death. Take a look at this. So Alan Duke is with us, and Alan, as I look at that and I remember that statement, very powerful opening statement, John Manuelian, I think correctly saying, you don't make promises you can't keep, and now the jury has one thing in their head, and this is something different that might come in that may leave them confused as to what the defense is trying to offer here. And John Manuelian, we talk about the lorazepam and the propofol and the two things getting together. You know, one thing that's always kind of shocked me, or at least got me guessing here, is the idea that Michael Jackson, Dr. Murray says he wanted his milk. He was addicted to this propofol. He needed it every night. So why get up and take lorazepam pills and then take the propofol if all you need is the propofol?
Well, according to the defense, because Michael Jackson had built a very high tolerance level, Ryan, and he tried to do that. If you follow Dr. Murray's information that he gave the police officers during his interview, he said that he gave it in a very consistent manner, the lorazepam, the clomazepam, nothing worked. And it was early in the morning when Michael Jackson threatened not to go to practice. At that point in time, that Dr. Murray said, okay, and gave in and gave him the propofol. So it wasn't something that he immediately wanted to do. He made it seem to the police that he didn't want to give him the propofol and that he tried to wean him off the propofol and only gave in after Michael Jackson threatened to cancel the practice that day.
Yeah, here's the thing, because when you have a case like this, everybody's supposed to share everything before the case begins. So all of a sudden in the middle of the case, new studies being done, turned over to the defense, possibly affecting the whole case. Well, did these guys have enough time to prepare for it? And should it be coming in this late? John Manuelian, I'll go out to you. What do you think about this? I mean, it's just coming out of the blue in the middle of the case, and it's a little surprising because normally all this should be handled up front very early, even before the trial begins.
Absolutely. Under the California law, there's a 30-day discovery cutoff rule, and the reason we do that is because we want to be fair. We don't want to surprise the defendant. We want him to have a fair opportunity for a trial. So this bombshell that's being dropped is important because the defense can't do any further testing. You can't expect Ed Chernoff and the defense team to just to drop what they're doing and now investigate this matter. So they're kind of stuck with the results right now, so it's unfair from that vantage point. But then again, Walgren can make a counter argument and say, look, you're the one that mentioned it in the opening statement, and that wouldn't be unfair to send to the jury because that's not true. So the judge has got to make a decision right now whether or not this is going to come in, and I guarantee you this, that if it does come in and if Conrad Murray loses, it's going to be a huge part of the appeal in this case.
And John Manuelian, as the defense steers more toward lorazepam as being the cause of death, don't they run headlong into the coroner's determination that it was acute propofol intoxication that killed Michael Jackson? And aren't jurors much more likely to believe the coroner than some defense attorney?
Yes, absolutely. So they're going to need either an expert to dispel what the coroner said, or you're going to need to show, look, this case is about two things. Number one, whether or not the doctor abandoned Michael Jackson in his time of need, and number two, what's the cause of the death? So if acute propofol intoxication is the cause of death, you've got to attack that and show it wasn't. If abandonment is the issue, then you've got to show that Michael Jackson died right away and there wouldn't be an abandonment issue. So they have problems. But here's my problem as a defense attorney. How could they expect Ed Chernoff and the defense team to all of a sudden battle this lorazepam issue now that the new toxicology results came out? And what bothers me is, and I hope this is not true, that the defense team didn't object vigorously to it. It's crazy to think that they would actually concede and say, okay, well, we're just going to concede, throw in the white towel, Your Honor, and we're not going to argue it anymore. I have a big problem with that. The prosecution should not be allowed to do that, and the only way the defense should allow this is after their objection has been overruled, and then you say, fine. At that point, you don't use the argument. But I can't imagine them not trying to block this out of court.
You got to wonder why Ed Chernoff allowed Dr. Conrad Murray to talk to cops. And in fact, TMZ is reporting that its police sources are saying that one of the reasons why Dr. Conrad Murray's on trial is precisely because he talked to cops, and they got a vibe that he was lying by about 30%. About 30% of what he was saying, according to these police sources, were lies, the detectives concluded. And that's one of the reasons why they decided to pursue this case. John Manuelian, why did Ed Chernoff, do you think, allow Dr. Conrad Murray to talk to cops for a couple of hours on tape?
Because I think Ed Chernoff honestly believed that the investigation, that Conrad Murray was not a target, and by giving a very limited statement and a self-serving statement that they would focus on other doctors. But you know, I would never, ever do that. That is so dangerous. I don't know any criminal defense attorney that would roll out the red carpet and bring their client straight to the police station for a police interview. That's just crazy, because now they're locked into a story. Murray said that he was there for 2 minutes. They can't get out of that timeline. And he locked himself into other statements, such as what he said to Katherine Jackson and so forth. And by the way, that could all be impeached. They could bring Paris. They could bring Katherine Jackson to say that Conrad Murray didn't say that. So you see that it's really problematic when you walk your client in and do a police interview. So I don't know why, but I suspect they thought they could get Conrad Murray out of the situation by doing that.
Wow, imagine that. Imagine if this would have been different if he wouldn't have talked to police. Well, that's all we have.